Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sentinel. I've been traveling the last couple of weeks, so I haven't posted as much as I normally do. But this is a very important episode that I want to talk to the viewers of Sentinel about. And at the outset, in the intro clip, you heard Bibi Netanyahu talk about that Israel does not want U.S. aid anymore. And Netanyahu is somebody that I don't trust for a variety of reasons. And I'll go into that later on in the episode. He's a Machiavellian monster, in my opinion. To his credit, all he gives a shit about is Israel and Zionism. He doesn't really care about the United States. And for us to believe that he does, we're freaking foolish. So Netanyahu comes out with this interview on 60 Minutes and talks about that he is not interested anymore in the U.S. aid that we give him. Now, he threw out a figure of $3.8 billion, and that figure is true. We are obligated every year to give $3.8 billion to Israel. In addition to that, we give billions more. So, for example, since October 7, 2023, we've been funding Israel's war against the Palestinians, against Lebanon, against Iran, and we've given them an additional $20 billion. So in the past 60 years, by some estimates, we've given Israel somewhere between $350 billion to $400 billion. Now think about that. That is money that America is borrowing on behalf of the taxpayers and giving to Israel to meet their military commitments and their expansionist goals. It just blows my mind that we have currently in the United States 20,000 veterans that are homeless. We've got 50 million people that are food insecure, and we've got decaying infrastructure, and our school system is overwhelmed. So, for example, my grandchildren are currently going to school in trailers. Now, think about this shit. They live close to Washington, D.C., and they go to school in close proximity to our nation's capital in trailers. That is completely unacceptable. And we also don't have a healthcare system. And just most recently, I found out when I turned 65 is that the government had taken away our healthcare benefits, and now we have to pay monthly for Medicare Part B. That makes absolutely no sense to me. As a military retiree, I was told that I would get healthcare benefits for life. Well, that isn't the case. I'm paying somewhere around $200 a month. Many people are paying upwards of $500 a month to get Medicare Part B. This is unacceptable, and especially really pisses me off when we're giving money to foreign countries. Now, let's get back on topic. So Netanyahu talks about this, and he's a very Machiavellian, untrustworthy person. In my view, I don't trust Netanyahu one bit. Let's take a look at this clip in his own words of how he talks about he can manipulate Americans.
הם יראו לנו את הפיישב פה בצחוק ופשוט הם לא פחדים לצחוק.
זה מה שמביא אותם
ואז, רגע, אבל אז השוק מהעולם יגיד מה, אתם כובשים? אתה לא מפחד מהעולם, ביבי?
במיוחד היום עם אמריקה, אני יודע מה זה אמריקה. אמריקה זה דבר שאפשר להזיז אותו בקלות, להזיז לכיוון הנכון. אבל לא יכניעו לנו.
אז אם אנחנו עושים לזה משהו, אז הם...
יש עליה, אז נניח שהם אומרים משהו. אז אמרו, 80% מהאמריקאים תומכים בנו. זה אבסורד.
So in the background, while he's making these bold statements that, hey, we don't need money from the United States anymore, in the background, he's working with APEC and other lobby groups in the United States to make sure that this funding continues, but in a manner that's even less transparent. It's not $3.8 billion anymore. So what Netanyahu and his cronies in Congress through APEC did was that in the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act, they slid a section in there, Section 224, which calls for an integration of the U.S. military and the Israeli military. Now think about this shit. It just blows my mind that we've got people in Congress that would even entertain this idea, that we would integrate our military with the IDF. And let me just talk about that for a minute. The main reason they're integrating this into the Department of War budget is for transparency purposes. Because all of a sudden, those, instead of the $3.8 billion, that number just disappears off the table, and the American taxpayers have no freaking clue of how much aid is going to Israel through the Department of War. So the 2027 National Defense Authorization Act basically has this Section 224, which talks about proposed military integration of the Israeli Defense Forces and the U.S. military. And there's certain initial components that they're talking about. Now, keep in mind, this is just the first step. In the subsequent National Defense Appropriations Act, there's going to be additional integrations. I guarantee you that. This is just opening the spigot. And the first thing they're talking about is advanced technology collaboration. It basically lays the foundation down for co-producing weapon systems and sharing research in AI, in quantum technology, autonomous systems, cyber biotechnology, and directed energy. So basically, we're going to be providing Israel all this stuff free of cost. And we know in the past that Israel has not been safeguarding a lot of the information and technologies that we've shared with them. They've shared it with the Russians. They've shared it with the Chinese. And so this is not a good thing for safeguarding our technical advantage, by sharing it with Israel, in my view. There's going to also be data fusion and network integration. So basically, they're going to have direct access for all U.S. military data, to include all your personal information and whatnot. And this just boggles my mind that we would allow them to have access to all our data in the U.S. military. Unacceptable. There's going to be shift from traditional aid, which basically means that rather than a cash-based military assistance, it's going to be heavily intertwined between the supply chains and collaborative manufacturing. Now, the problem is this. When you integrate these two militaries together, we've got different ethos. For example, the U.S. military operates from the UCMJ. We abide by all the international protocols. Does the Israeli military? I don't believe so. And the reason I say that is because what the hell happened in Gaza? 22,000 children were killed. And let me tell you something. I take this pretty damn seriously. And the reason I take it seriously is because no child should be held accountable and punished or killed for the actions of their parents. That's not who we are. Those are not our values. Israel does not have a constitution. We have a constitution. Our constitutional values are very simple. Constitutional values are pretty straightforward. Liberty, freedom, equality, human dignity, and we've also got justice and rule of law. Will Israeli military abide by that? I don't believe they will. The other important thing to remember is we're violating our own laws when it comes to Israel. There's the Symington and Glenn amendments, which are foreign policy laws designed to deter the spread of nuclear weapons by restricting U.S. foreign assistance to countries that engage in unsafe nuclear enrichment or detonation. Now, Israel has a nuclear arsenal. We know this. And there's plenty of intelligence that confirms this, yet we continue to violate our own laws and continue to provide them foreign assistance. And this is wrong. A nation that starts violating its own laws for a foreign nation, you're talking treason here. Unfortunately, we've sort of just pushed that off the table because, very shrewdly, AIPAC has essentially bought off a majority of the congressmen in Congress. And, consequently, nobody cares about our own laws, and we continue to violate them. And to me, it just boggles my mind that we would allow that. These people should be hauled in front of judges for violating this law. It's that simple. This is not rocket science. We are a nation of laws. We're a republic with a constitution that we must follow. We've all taken an oath to uphold our constitution. And as part of that constitution, we need to follow our own laws. And if we stop doing that for a foreign nation, then we have become a vassal state of that nation. And that's exactly what's happening to the United States vis-a-vis Israel. There's no other nation that we treat like this. Let's take a look at who actually sponsored this bill. The first person that sponsored this bill was Representative Josh Gottheimer from New Jersey. And Representative Gottheimer got over $2 million from AIPAC in PAC money. I mean, this blows my mind. So he's basically getting millions of dollars from AIPAC to make this stuff happen in the background and to ensure that Israel continues to get their aid. And the next person that sponsored this bill was Andrew Garbarino. He got around $200,000 from AIPAC. And finally, the third person that sponsored this bill was Joe Wilson from South Carolina. He got about $375,000 from AIPAC. So my point being is these congressmen are on the take. They're corrupt. They're taking money from an organization with foreign interests. And this is unacceptable. But luckily, we have two congressmen, Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna, opposing this bill. And they've said they won't allow it to come out of committee. I applaud them. You know, Thomas Massie has taken zero money from AIPAC. Ro Khanna took some money from AIPAC, and now AIPAC is publicly shaming him because he doesn't support them because he took their money. I mean, this is like reality TV in my mind, and it's mind-blowing to me. So this is all about safeguarding America's interests. And I guarantee you there's going to be some people that are going to chime in and say, hey, Genghis, you're anti-Semitic. Bullshit. I'm going to call you out on that right up front. You know, just criticism of Israel, to me, is not anti-Semitic by any means. Being pro-American is not anti-Semitic by any means. I don't give a shit what country we were trying to integrate with. This is not in the best interest of the United States, and this is not who we are. Many of us, risked our lives fighting for our country, fighting for our Constitution, and we should not allow this to happen. Now, what can we do about it? I'll be real straightforward. What you need to do about it is if you belong in the districts of these three representatives, you need to call them out. You need to call them out in town halls, and you need to write a letter, you need to write an email, or you need to call their office and say this is bullshit and they're freaking traitors for doing it. I mean, we got to take a serious stance in it. This is where we draw the line. And similarly, if you live in other districts, call your representatives in Congress and tell them that you do not support Section 224 of the NDAA. It's that simple. Write to them, send an email, call their offices in their home districts, or call their offices in Washington, D.C. But we got to speak up, and we got to speak out loudly that we're not going to tolerate this nonsense, and we don't want to be intermingled with Israel in any form or fashion. And I'll tell you why. The reason being is because they've already drug us into endless wars. They drugged us into a war in 1982 in Lebanon. The consequences of that was the Marine barracks got blown up. They drug us into the war in Iraq, and we all know what happened there. They drug us into a war in Libya. They drug us into a war in Syria. And now, most recently, they dragged us into a war in Iran. And I told you at the outset, this thing's going to turn a mess, and it already is turned into a mess. And President Trump most recently announced that he's frustrated with Netanyahu. And evidently, in most recent news media reports, President Trump had it out with Netanyahu and called him, crazy, and basically had words with him. And I think President Trump is starting to get smart about Israel and Netanyahu. That guy's freaking dangerous. I'm telling you. He's got zero interest in what's good for the United States. He just gives a shit about himself, and that's all he cares about. And quite frankly, I don't even think he cares about the Israelis because he's a megalomaniac and he's very Machiavellian. And we all need to stay clear of this guy. He is an indicted war criminal. He's indicted in his own home country for corruption. And he's not a good guy as far as I'm concerned. So stay the hell away from him because nothing good is going to come out with this man. Again, we need to make sure we maintain our sovereignty as a nation. And we maintain the integrity of our Constitution. And we don't tarnish it in any way. So I welcome your comments. Tell me if I'm off base. But this is the time for us to stand up for America and stand up for our constitutions. And we need to call out these congressmen that are taking money left and right, which is tainted by foreign interests. And I don't give a shit where that money's coming from. We don't want foreign interference in our domestic governance and in our elections. It's that simple. As you well know, Thomas Massie lost the primary to an individual that received $15 million from AIPAC. These guys are putting big money into by their votes. And it really pisses me off that we cannot have a fair election in this country without some outsiders trying to influence it for their benefit, not for America's benefit. If it was for America's benefit, we'd take all that damn money that we gave to foreign countries and put it right back into America, to our children, so my grandchildren don't have to, go to school in trailers in the nation's capital. Unheard of. And unacceptable. And this is the time for us to stand up and speak out. So I'm counting on all of you to contact your representatives and get fired up about it as I am. That's all I got. Stay rugged, Stay united, and please don't forget to say a prayer for our service members that are still in harm's way. Khan out.